So now let's start with the concept of interfaces. Okay. Now the question which arises is that everything has a driver, whether it is a Firefox driver, a Chrome driver, IE driver, Opera driver, Safari driver, everything has a driver. So will you be learning the driver classes separately? Say suppose if I have to work upon say Firefox browser, then will the commands and the approach be different than if I have to work on the Chrome browser or IE browser or Opera browser or something like that? Will I have to create the object of each and every driver again and again in my project? What if a single script I want to run on multiple browsers? So how can you do that? This is one question which generally comes into our mind. So this concept is addressed under the concept of interfaces. Okay, for example, say if we take the general example of a bookstore, if we go to the bookstore, then what you see over there, you just have a look at the front cover and the back cover of the book, and then you judge that find what this book is offering to us, and then we can buy or not according to our requirement. Right. Similarly goes with the menu, with the food menu. You ultimately don't know how the food is going to taste, but menu over there is like an interface which tells what that menu is offering to us, what all food items are being offered to us by a particular restaurant. Right. Similarly, interface describes what project will do, what all commands and features will be there in a project. They all comes under the concept of interfaces. Alright, for example, say if we go to the official website of Selenium, seleniumhq.org website, and we go to the documentation of C#, API docs of C#. Over here you can see we have various interfaces that are present in the documentation of C#. We have various interfaces. Say suppose let's take one example. Let's see. Say if I go to the mouse interface. Mouse interface, what it says, it provides you the methods representing the basic mouse actions. For example, the click, double click, context click, mouse up, mouse down. Right. So these are all the basic functions that are provided by the mouse interface. How it is implemented, we don't know. We are just making use of these functions of the mouse interfaces. Right, you just like it is just describing the functionalities and then we are using them. How it is all done behind the screen, what code is being written to click somewhere, to mouse up, to mouse down, to double click, we don't know anything. We are just making use of these functions. So interface helps you know what the system does. For example, the keyboard of your system provides you the interface between the buttons. You press the buttons and something happens on the screen. How it happens, we don't know. We don't know anything. Similarly, in C# as well, we have interface. We have an interface. Okay, so let's discuss that. I'll add a new project. Yes, Vijaya, please mute your microphones. Okay, I'll create a console application. Yes, Vijaya, please mute your microphones. Sorry? Please mute. Okay, so we have our console application project. Right, now in this project what I'll do is, let's say suppose I add an interface. So how do you add? You just right click on your project, third day, I go to add new item, and over here we have an option to create an interface, that is interface, right? So let's say suppose I add an interface named a phone interface. I create an interface called as phone. Okay, now what is an interface? What functionalities are provided by the interface? Now in an interface, the first point is, in an interface there is only the function declaration. You cannot implement the functions in an interface. That is in an interface you can just declare your functions, no implementation is there in an interface. What do I mean by that? For example, now what all functionalities will a phone provide to you? Any phone would provide to you. That is, we all know that every phone has the functionalities of calling and texting, right? So what I do, I simply create a function known as void the call and the text functions. Okay, now say suppose the first point is only the function declaration, no implementation. Now say suppose if I try to implement this function, okay, that is I write anything over here, I try to implement this function. Implementation means defining the function, right? Say suppose I am trying to define this function. Okay, so now if I compile my code, I go to the build menu, build solution. Okay, hold on. Yeah, so when you compile your code, it gives you the compilation error, that is the call method of the interface cannot have a definition. You see that interface members cannot have a definition. That is, in an interface you cannot define your methods. There is no implementation of the functions in an interface. There is only the function declaration. Okay, right, so this is the first point. So what will happen is, so now if a layman looks at this code, looks at this interface, he'll come to know that what all functionalities are present in a particular interface. Okay, now the second point is you cannot print anything in an interface. We have just seen that. If you try to print anything over here, okay, you cannot just do that. You see that the name console.writeLine does not exist in the current context. We cannot print anything in an interface. So that is another concept. Okay, and then the third point is, there are no public access specifiers. That is, these functions are public by default only. They are public by default only. If you try to make them as public, if you try to make a function as public, then you will get an error. It says that the modifier public is not valid for this call item. It is because these functions are public by default. There is no need to declare them as public, otherwise you will get the compilation error. Okay, and lastly, the last point is, you cannot declare fields in an interface as we can do in the class. That is, if you try to declare a field, say string x is equal to null, okay, and then you see an error coming up, interfaces cannot contain fields. Okay, so you cannot declare the fields inside an interface. Fine, so everybody got what is an interface, the four properties of an interface. The first is in an interface you can only declare your functions, no implementation is there in an interface, so that if a layman looks at this code, he'll easily come to know what this phone is offering to you, what all functionalities a phone has. Okay, then secondly, you cannot print anything in an interface. Then there are no public access specifiers in an interface. The functions are declared public by default only. And lastly, you cannot declare fields in an interface. Okay, so this is what is an interface. Now let's say suppose we'll add a class in our project. Say I add new item and I add a new class, for example the Nexus class. Now we all know that Nexus is a phone. So Nexus will also have the functionalities of calling and texting, right? The call and the text function this Nexus phone would also have. So then why to initialize the call and the text function again in the Nexus class, as like if we have already declared in the phone interface? Why is there a need to declare them again? So what we will do is, so now we will implement the phone interface. So that what all functionalities, the all functions that we have declared in an interface, those functions now we will be implementing in the class which is implementing the interface, that is the Nexus class. And how do you implement an interface? You put a colon followed by the name of the interface. Okay, right. So then in the class now we need to implement the functions which are declared in the phone interface, that is the call and the text functions. If you don't implement those functions in the implementing class, then also you will get an error. Okay, you see that it says Nexus does not implement the member call, Nexus does not implement the member text. It is not implementing the two members call and the text, so it is giving you the compilation error. Alright, so what we will do now is we will implement the functions, that is what all functions we have. We have two functions, call function, that is I say call someone, and similarly we have another function, public void text function. Okay, so this is how, that is all the functions which are there in the interface. You need to implement all the functions in the class which is implementing the interface, otherwise you will get an error. So this is the rule of an interface. Okay, and in the implementing class these functions can be declared as public. You will not get the error for the class, right? This is the simple class that we all know, but in the interface we have some rules that has to be followed. Okay, now say suppose I have one more class with me, that is say the class is iPhone. Okay, now iPhone is a phone, we all know that, right? And iPhone will also have the functionality of calling and texting. So rather than declaring them again, we will just implement the phone interface over here as well. Okay, right? So if you are implementing the interface, then you have to implement the two members as well that you have in the interface, that is the call and the text functions. So in the same way as we have done in the case of Nexus, we'll do the same process in the iPhone class as well, that is we will implement the two functions. So there are like either you can write the two functions manually, or else if you go to this, if you hover your mouse to this phone interface, you see this yellow bar with a down arrow. You just click on this arrow and it says implement the interface. So when you click on this, the two methods will be implemented automatically, like all the methods will be implemented automatically, and then you just need to give a definition, a different logic. According to your logic you can just define those functions. Okay, say I give calling iPhone and text iPhone. Okay, so iPhone is the implementing class which is implementing the phone interface. Now the question, now again one question which arises is, like right now what we have with us, we have the phone interface, right, which has the two functions declared inside it, the call and the text functions which are being declared in the phone interface. And then what we have is, we have the two classes with us. The two classes, what are those classes? The Nexus class and the iPhone class. So since this class is implementing the phone interface, so the two functions that are present in the phone interface, those functions will be implemented, like it has to be implemented in the class which is implementing the interface. So this Nexus and the iPhone class will also have to implement the call and the text functions, the two functions which are present in the interface, that is the phone interface, and the two functions call and the text functions. But then the question which arises is, why are we declaring, what is the need of declaring this interface? We can just remove this phone interface and we can create the two classes and then call the and then can initialize the two functions and implement. Then what is the need of creating this phone interface? Why? Okay, we can directly work with the class. So the reason is, it is because, say suppose if tomorrow a new class comes in, say suppose tomorrow new class comes in, say Samsung class. Now Samsung is also a phone, it will also have the functionality of calling and texting, right? It also has the functionality of calling and texting. So if this Samsung class, if this Samsung class implements the phone interface, then automatically, then a layman would automatically understand that fine, the call and the text functions will be present for sure in the Samsung class as well, if this class is implementing the phone interface. So rather than creating the same functions in all the classes, we can create in one single interface and all the classes will simply implement that phone interface. Okay, fine. Like the implementation would differ, the implementation will be different, like the way the Nexus calls, the way the iPhone calls, it might be different, but the function name would be same in all the implementing classes. It would be same in all the implementing classes, right? So similarly, interfaces are present in Selenium as well. For example, if we look into the documentation of Selenium, we have just seen the mouse interface. iMouse is just the naming convention in C#. That is, since we are talking about the interface, so they just prefix the word with I, capital I. This is just the naming convention of an interface in C#. Okay, so similarly interfaces are present in Selenium as well. For example, these are all the interfaces. You can just have a look at the documentation, and the most important interface is the WebDriver interface, the interface that we will be making use of when we will study the when we'll just move towards the Selenium concepts. Okay, that is the WebDriver interface. Okay, so here it is, the WebDriver interface. So WebDriver interface, this is the interface through which the user controls the browser, and all the driver classes, Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, all the driver classes are implementing this driver interface, this WebDriver interface. Alright, and then you can just have a look at this, what this WebDriver interface contains, what all functions are present in this interface, the title, URL of the function, close, find element, find elements, quit function. These are all the functions that we have that are provided under the WebDriver interface. Okay, right. And then we have seen, I think yesterday, in the yesterday's class, if I open the yesterday's project, I'll just show you. Okay, so in the yesterday we have discussed like how we open the three different browsers, right? So in order to open the Firefox browser, we need to write 3 lines of code. That is, we have to give the path of the gecko driver.exe, and similarly for the Chrome and the IE driver as well. But then you see that in order to navigate to a particular URL, we were just firing the URL function. Or if you want to navigate on the Firefox browser, then you simply say fd.url and you give the path to a particular the navigation URL. And similarly, if you want to navigate on the Chrome browser, then you fire the same URL function, that is cd.url and your URL, and similarly for the IE browser as well. So over here you see that the same URL function is present in all the driver classes. Why? It is because just now, as I told you, all the driver classes, Firefox driver, Chrome driver, IE driver, since all these driver classes are implementing the WebDriver interface, and inside this WebDriver interface we have the URL function. Right. So because of this WebDriver interface, since all the driver classes are implementing it, because of which we are easily able to access the URL function in all the driver classes. And then we will study more topics, more concepts of the WebDriver interface in the coming classes when we study the concept of Selenium. So this is one concept. Like, this is just a simple scenario, this URL function which we can use in all the driver classes. Alright, so coming back to our interface, the interface project. Okay, fine. So over here we have the phone interface. Now what is the usage of the interface? So the first point is the functions are same in all the implementing classes. What all functions to declare in an interface? Those functions are same in the implementing classes, the class which is implementing the interface. Okay, fine. And secondly, let's take an example. Let's correlate this with the help of an example. For example, say if I go to Yahoo Mail. Okay, or else let's go to the Facebook example, say. Okay, now say suppose I have to log into my account. So what you will do is you need to enter your username and password, then you click on the login button and you will be logging into your account. And then what you need to do now, what is your scenario is you have to enter your username, password, click on the login button. This is your script. Okay, and then what you need to do is you need to execute this script in all the three browsers, Firefox, Chrome and the IE browser. You need to execute this script, that is entering username, password and clicking on the login button in all the three browsers. So how will you do that? Let's see that now. Okay, so I'll just create a new class for this example, that is, say, Facebook class it is. Okay, and inside it, say suppose I'll just add a main function. Okay, now over here what I do, I create a variable browser is equal to say Mozilla, that is I want to execute my script on the Mozilla browser. You can give any value, that is if you want to execute your script on the Chrome or the IE browser, then you can give the value as well. So right now we are trying to read, we have declared a string variable in which we are initializing our value. So tomorrow when we do the framework, so then we will try to read this browser parameter from an external file, the Excel file. Okay, so that also we'll discuss in the coming classes. Right now we have hard coded the browser information in our class only. Okay, fine. Now we have the browser variable. So now what you will do is we will just check with the browser that if browser is equal to Mozilla, then what you need to do is you just need to open the Firefox browser, right? So you will be writing the regular Firefox driver code in order to open the Firefox browser. So for that, first of all, we'll have to include the Selenium DLLs, right? So I add reference. Okay, so how do you add the Selenium DLLs into your project? You right click on the references folder and then you have an option add reference. Okay, and then you browse to your location where you have downloaded the Selenium DLLs from the official website of Selenium, right? So this we have discussed. Then there is another way how can you add the Selenium DLLs, how can you add any DLL into your project. That is, for that you right click on the references folder, then we have one option that is manage NuGet packages. Okay, so we click on it, and then over here you just search for your DLL, the WebDriver or any DLL that you want to install in your Visual Studio project. Say suppose right now I am interested in working with the WebDriver DLLs. I want the WebDriver DLLs, right? So I search for the WebDriver and the WebDriver related DLLs come up. Okay, so I need to install, I just want the Selenium DLL, selenium.webdriver, which will have all the DLLs inside it, the DLLs that are required to open the three browsers or all the browsers, right? So right now I'll just be installing the selenium.webdriver, and then you see that whenever you try to install the WebDriver DLLs from the NuGet packages, then you will have the latest version for that particular DLL file. Okay, you will always have the latest version in the NuGet packages. So if you want to work with the Selenium 2 or with any of the version, then you will have to install it from the official website of Selenium. And then we have seen that yesterday, from the previous releases link, you go to the official website. Okay, and if you want to go with the previous version, then you go to this previous releases link, and out here on this web page you can install your required version of the Selenium DLLs. All the versions that have come up till now, they will come up in this list. Okay, fine. So it is adding the Selenium WebDriver package. Fine, so it has finished. Okay, and then I close it, and then if you open this references folder, you see that the WebDriver DLL has been installed. Okay, so right now, like yesterday when we installed, when we try to add the DLLs from the official website, then you can see that, I'll show you. So in the Selenium package, usually like 3 DLLs comes up in the Selenium package, that is Selenium.WebDriver backed Selenium, then we have WebDriver DLL, and the WebDriver.support DLL. Okay, so 3 DLLs come with the Selenium package. Okay, but right now since we are just trying to open the 3 browsers, we don't require the other 2 DLLs, the WebDriver backed Selenium and the WebDriver support DLLs. Okay, so in the coming classes we'll come to know when these 2 DLLs are required. So right now for the initialization, for working with the browsers, the 3 browsers, we just require the WebDriver. So for that I have just installed one single WebDriver DLL only. Okay, so now if the browser is equal to Mozilla, then we need to open the Firefox browser. So I'll have to write the code for it, Firefox driver service, and then I press Ctrl plus dot and will include the class that is openqa.selenium.firefox is equal to Firefox driver service dot create default service, and you need to give the path of the gecko driver.exe file, which is this path, and I put @ symbol and the name of the exe file, that is gecko driver.exe. Okay, and then we also need to set the binary path service.firefox binary path of the Firefox browser, that is under C drive program files 86 Mozilla Firefox, and then we have the firefox.exe file. I give the path and I put @ symbol so that it automatically takes the double slashes in the path, and then you create the object of your Firefox driver. Say ft is equal to new Firefox driver, and then inside it we will pass the service object. Okay, so if the browser is equal to Mozilla, then we will be opening the Firefox browser. Else you say that else if the browser is equal to Chrome, else if the browser is Chrome, then it would open the Chrome browser. Okay, and inside this as well we need to set the path of the Chrome driver.exe, which is over here. This is your Chrome driver.exe, so I'll just take this path and I keep it. And similarly, else if the browser is IE, then we say then it should open your Internet Explorer driver. Okay, and inside this as well you need to set the path of the ie.exe file. Okay, fine. So according to the browser information, you will be opening the respective browsers. Then next what you need to do is, after opening the browser, you have to navigate to the Facebook website in order to execute this script. We are taking this example, right? So what you will say is, after opening the browser, you will say fd.url and you give your URL, that is facebook.com. Okay, and similarly if it opens the Chrome browser, then we will give cd.url is equal to the same http.facebook.com URL over here as well. And similarly the same concept for the IE browser as well, if it opens the IE browser. Right, so and then after that, after navigating to the URL, what next we have to do? We have to enter the username and the password and click on this login button. So first of all, and the same concept, like if the browser is Mozilla, if it is opening the Mozilla browser, then we will try to find the username text field first, and then we will enter the data in the username text field. And then same if the browser is Chrome, then we will write the same piece of code. We are writing the same piece of code in all the if statement. The same functions, writing same piece of code again and again. So how will you resolve it? So this concept, this issue is resolved with the help of interfaces. Okay, that is how can we overcome writing the same piece of code again and again in each and every if statement, that is addressed under the concept of interface. So let's come back to our phone interface first. Let's discuss this concept with the example phone class, and then we will switch back to our Facebook example. Okay, so let's say suppose I add a new class in my project, that is say test phone. I declare it as public and I create a main function. Fine. Now inside this main function, what I'll do is, let's say suppose I create the object of phone interface. I'll try to create the object of the phone interface. So how do you create the object of an interface? That is, how do you create the object? You simply say the name of the interface is phone, p is equal to new phone, right? This is how you create the object of anything, how you create the object. But then if you see that we are getting the error below this new phone. Now why? What is the error? The error says cannot create an instance of the interface phone. That is, so the rule number 1 goes, you cannot create the object of an interface. Since interface is nothing, it's just the skeleton. As we all can see, in an interface we are doing nothing, we are just declaring the functions. The actual functionalities are present in the implementing class, but in the interface we are not doing anything. So why to create the object of the phone interface? What is the need of creating the object of the interface? Okay, rather we would create the object of the implementing classes, that is the Nexus and the iPhone class. Since in the classes only we are doing our functionalities, we are writing our logic. Okay, so then we will create the object of the Nexus class, and similarly you create the object of the iPhone class. Okay, and then you can access the functions of the respective classes as well, that is n.call, and similarly I say n.text function, and the same thing with the iPhone class as well, that is ip.call, and similarly the text function. Okay, and then if I say, I'll also write console.read key to read the output, and sorry, I'll just comment the main function of the Facebook class, and I think okay, in the program.cs class file as well we have one main function. Okay, right, and fine. So now if I execute my script, you see that it simply prints the two functionalities, call someone, text someone of the Nexus class, and the iPhone calling and the iPhone text of the iPhone class, right? So this is how you can work with the interface. That is, instead of creating the object of the interface, we would rather create the object of the implementing class. Okay, and this is how you create the object of any class. All right. But there is one more way how you can create the object of the implementing class. Okay, one more thing. Now say suppose this Nexus class have an additional functionality of Google features, right? We all know that Nexus phone also has the functionality of Google features. Say suppose I create one more function in my Nexus class, say Google features. It is in the Google map function in the Nexus class. So when in your main function, when you can simply access this Google Maps function with the Nexus class, right? You can simply access that. But if you try to access this Google Map function with the iPhone class, then you cannot do that. Why? It is because this function, Google Map function, is present in the Nexus class, not in the iPhone class or not in the phone interface, because of which you are not able to access this Google Maps function in the iPhone class. But in the Nexus class we can do that because we have declared it in the Nexus class only. Okay, so additional functionalities, if any class has additional functionality, then you can simply access that. You can simply access that in that very particular class only, not in all the classes. Okay, so the common things has to be kept in an interface, and additional functionalities you can keep in the respective classes. Okay, now I was telling you there is one more way. This is how you create the object of any class, but then there is also one more way how you can create the object of these classes, Nexus and the iPhone class. That is, I say phone P is equal to new Nexus. Now what is happening over here? That is, you are saying interface, this phone is an interface, right? This is the reference, P is the reference. We have discussed yesterday the what is the difference between an object and an object reference. This is not the object, this is the object, but this is just the reference of the phone interface. So the reference of the phone interface, we are equating it to the object of the implementing class, right? Okay, so this is another way how you create the object of the implementing class. That is, we have right now created the object of the Nexus class. We are not creating the object of the interface. When, like yesterday I told you, when you say new followed by the name of the class, then you are creating the object of that very particular class only. Okay, so over here we are creating the object of the Nexus class, and then this P is the reference of the phone interface, which is referred, which is now pointing towards the Nexus class. This P is now pointing towards the object of the Nexus class, which is actually the reference of the phone interface. Okay, right. So this is how, so this is one way we are creating the object of the Nexus class, and this is also creating the object of the Nexus class. Then what is the difference between the two methods? That is, with this method, if you are creating the object of the Nexus class like this, then with this method you can access all the functions of the Nexus class. But if you are creating the object like this with the second method, then if you try to access the Google Map function, then you cannot do that with this type of object creation of the Nexus class. You cannot call the Google Maps function if you are creating the object like this, but you can call the call and the text functions successfully. You can call the call and the text functions, but not the Google Maps function if you're trying to create the object of the Nexus class like this. Okay, so this is what is the concept. This is what is the difference between the two methods how you create the object of the two classes, Nexus and the phone Nexus class. Okay, fine. So with the second method we are not able to access all the methods, but with this you can access all the methods. Similarly, you can also say phone P1 is equal to new iPhone. You can also create the object of the iPhone class as well in the similar way, and you can call the call and the text function of the iPhone class as well. Okay, or else what we can do is we can simply say phone say x is equal to null z, okay, and then you say z is equal to new Nexus. If you want to create the object of the Nexus class, then you can equate this reference to the object of the Nexus class, or else if you want to access the iPhone class, then you can equate it to new iPhone. Alright, okay, so this is how. Similarly, say the same concept we will be applying in our Facebook example as well. Let's say, suppose now let's go to our Facebook example. Okay, now over here I'll just comment this main function. Okay, now over here what we are doing is we are declaring a string variable which is having the browser information. Then according to the browser information, it will open the respective browser first, then it will navigate to the URL, and same concept goes in every if else statement. So then how can you avoid writing the same piece of code again and again? That is, I told you we will be making use of the interface. So now over here, can anybody tell me which interface we can use in this example? in this Selenium example that we are trying to execute? Anybody wants to try? Sorry, I didn't get you. Yes, very correct. Yeah, very good. So WebDriver interface we will make use of over here. That is, I told you. So what we will do is, I'll declare my WebDriver URL, that is, we'll have to import the class for it using openqa.selenium. WebDriver, I will just keep it to null initially, okay, and then instead of declaring the Firefox driver, Chrome driver again and again, we'll just keep the driver information, okay, and rather than calling this URL function for each and every driver class, I'll tell you, we say if the browser is equal to Mozilla, then the driver, this is your driver, initially you are equating it to null, so if it equals Mozilla, then driver would be equal to the Firefox driver, that is, it would just initialize your Firefox browser, else if it equals Chrome, then it would initialize your Chrome browser, else it would initialize your IE browser, and then after that you can simply say with this interface driver.url is equal to navigate to facebook.com website, okay, and similarly we can write the code to enter the username and the password. That is, first of all we need to find the two text fields, the username text field, so that concept we will be discussing from tomorrow, how you work with the web elements, okay, right. So now if I run my code, okay, so I am initializing my Firefox browser, it is equal to Mozilla, okay, so if I execute my script, so it opens the Firefox browser and then you see that it navigates to the facebook.com website also. And similarly, if you want to print the title of your web page, then that also you can simply do, that is driver.title, okay, you need to print it, so you'll write it in the console.writeline, that is console.writeline, and print the title of the web page, okay, and I'll also write console.readKey, so that we can read the output, and I'll execute it once again. So it navigates to Facebook website, and then you see that in the console output, you see it prints the title of the web page, Facebook login or sign up, the title of the web page. Okay, so this is how you work with the interfaces, and similarly in Selenium as well we have the WebDriver interface, that is all the driver classes are implementing the WebDriver interface.